Good morning, everyone. Thank you for those who sat Zazen with us. Welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday morning Dharma talk. This morning we have a talk by Carl Hultman, who was an infantry platoon leader in Viet Nam and in the late 1980s came to the Dharma through the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh. He was a board member for 5 years at Clouds and Water Zen Center. In 2010, after retiring from the Postal Service, he moved to Hokyoji with his wife, Susan Ekyo Nelson, a senior priest at Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, who we heard from last week. And after a few years, became Hokyoji's executive director, and now he splits his time between Hokyoji and Minneapolis. And so, Carl, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, let's see, because I'm kind of controlling this. So we want to go to speaker and pin me. Well, this is a nice, small, intimate group here on Mother's Day. I didn't realize I was scheduled to give a talk weeks ago. And it was during the work weekend at Hokyoji when we had a bunch of guests there and stuff. And so Kyoko switched with me. And she had this date. I didn't realize that it was going to be Mother's Day, but that's fine. I love mothers. And I want to, kind of dedicate this talk to mothers. I put a title up there, being patient with impatience. And mothers really have to cultivate patience with their kids. I mean, it's, toddlers will drive you right up the wall, as my daughter is finding out. But anyway, so I wanted to read a little thing here about mothers. If you can see this, to me, it looks backwards. It's called A Rose for Your Pocket. And it's a little pamphlet, kind of, a little booklet, 10-page booklet by Thich Nhat Hanh that I picked up for, I think, $2.50 back in 1987 or something. I believe he wrote this little thing about his mother's in 1962, and when his mother died. And I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it because I think he makes a really important point. He says, "Mother's devotion is overflowing like water from a mountain spring. Maternal love is our first taste of love. Our mother is the teacher who first teaches us love, the most important subject in life." I think that pretty much says it all. Sometimes we don't appreciate that mothers taught us about love. We think we kind of stumble around, but they set the example for us anyway. A bow to all mothers. So, being patient with impatience. So I drive back and forth to Hokyoji almost weekly, several times a month at least. And I'm an impatient person. I want to get where I'm going when I want to. And I don't like things that frustrate me in pursuing my goals. And I reflect on how I've changed over the years. I used to be much more reactive than I am. I'm still reactive, but I used to be much more. Anyway, patience. I was reading a thing by a psychologist, and he was saying that he thought the terms were kind of confusing, that you should have impatience as your basic frame of mind, and patience should actually be impatient. The absence of impatience, because impatience is almost always present. It was an interesting take on that. I don't think I can argue with it, but the language is what it is. So patience is, it's actually one of the perfections, the paramitas. And the dictionary defines impatient. I love this one. The quality of or condition of being impatient. So that's what impatience is. Or they say the state or character of lacking patience, restlessness under existing conditions, eager desire for relief or change. The third one was intolerance of anything that thwarts or hinders, passionate vehemence, well, in a milder sense, quickness of temper or touchiness. So anyway, all of those. But the Buddha thought that impatience was important enough to, include in the paramitas. And one of the definitions of patience about it's one of the perfections, the paramitas, that a bodhisattva trains in and practices to realize perfect enlightenment. The Buddhist concept of patience is distinct from the English definition of the word. In Buddhism, patience refers to not returning harm rather than merely enduring a difficult situation. It is the ability to control one's emotions even when being criticized or attacked. And the Dhammapada says enduring patience is the highest austerity. I think that I can attest to that. Sometimes being patient is really difficult. You've probably heard of the experiment they did with people and got them to sit in a room by themselves, a silent room for 15 minutes with no distractions. And the only distraction that they allowed was they had a machine there that you could shock yourself with. And it was just mildly painful, little electric shock. And the majority of the people couldn't sit there for 15 minutes in silence, and they started shocking themselves because they're bored or impatient. It's an interesting aspect of human nature here. In the Satipatthana Sutta, one of the core writings of the Buddha, they talk about patience, and patience is one of the 12 links. And I know how people feel about the 12 links. And I've always, people are kind of scratching their head. Of course, it doesn't help that there are numerous interpretations of the links, anywhere from, I think the early ones were 10 links, and then they went to 12, and different traditions have emphasized different ones. But anyway, consciousness, they say, arises dependent on the eye consciousness, arises dependent on the eye and sights. The meaning of the three is contact. So consciousness, the eye, and the object of your vision. Contact is a condition for feeling. What you feel, you perceive. What you perceive, you think about. And what you think about, you proliferate. What you proliferate about is the source from which a person is beset by concepts of identity that emerge from the proliferation of perceptions. This occurs with respect to sights known to the eye in the past, the future, the presence. The same process is then repeated for all of the six sense bases. So we are subject to the arising of this consciousness, and what they call this arising in Buddhism is Vedana. So Vedana is often translated into English as feelings, but it's slightly different than what we understand as feelings. What we understand as feelings, I think, are more accurately described as emotions. So the thing about Vedana is there is no judgments going on there. There's no thought going on. Vedana is just the taste of experience in everyday life. So when you take a drink of something, you don't think about how it tastes. Immediately, you know whether you like the taste, you don't like the taste, or it's of no meaning to you, that there's, that you don't care. It's like flat water or something like that. And so Vedana pops up as soon as we come in contact with something. And it's I think the 7th link in the 12 links. And it comes right before craving. So craving is dependent on Vedana. And Vedana is without discrimination. It's just the taste of something. And you like orange juice or you don't like the taste of orange juice. You don't have to think about it. And that's unfortunately the way that all of our experience goes. We have reactions to them that we don't think about, that we either are in favor of what we experience, we're not in favor of it, or we just don't care. And it's always those 3 choices. So where is my... You have to bear with me this morning. I'm not completely organized. Anyway, what does Vedana have to do with patience and impatience? Because I believe that impatience is your reaction to your momentary experience. I'm driving in a car and somebody is driving 5 miles under the speed limit in front of me, and I want to get somewhere. I don't stop and think, well, I'm going to be impatient about this. I'm going to be frustrated about this. It just happens. And because Vedana it's judgmental, but it's doesn't involve thought. So in the 12 links, because Vedana is the precursor to craving, and craving is the precursor to suffering, that if you can break the 12 links to prevent the suffering from arising, the easiest spot to break those 12 links is at Vedana, because it's not good or bad. It just is. There is no judgment there. You're not responsible for the Vedana that arises. We are responsible for how we process those feelings and turn them into emotions. We are that. But as that arises, that's the place that it's easiest to cut that chain. And so I was reading a piece from Biko Nalio, who's the German scholar, who was a Pali scholar and also a Chinese scholar. And in an interview, he's talking about the Vedana, and he's saying that if you start to pay attention to your reactivity, and reactivity, Stephen Batchelor first, started talking about reactivity and the difference between reacting from habit to what we experience or thoughtfully responding to what we experience. And I always thought that was a really good point to come across. But as you pay attention to how you are processing what you experience, and a lot of that is, sitting, staring at a wall, and you see things arise, and then they pass away, and they arise, and they pass away. But you start to see where some of these impulses originate. You can start to trace some of this stuff back, and sometimes you can trace it back to that arising of the Vedana that started the whole process towards craving. And what Bhikkhu Analayo says here, he says this is all based on feeling. It's all based on this awareness of the hedonic side. And so hedonic is, it's a technical term which describes experience as pleasurable or not pleasurable. And that's basically it. So it's just a hedonic feeling. And he says, maybe we don't catch these impulses at the moment that they happen in a discussion. Let's say we're having a talk. John, you and I have been through this over the years. So, but we can see it afterwards. And here he spouts out this example. He says, yes, at that point, I got really excited and all I had these strong feelings. And then I went really overboard with the way I was discussing it. So you can acknowledge that. And you're not saying, oh, I shouldn't have done it. No, you're just being aware that this is how it arose. And he says, and next time you might get closer to it when you can recognize it arising. And eventually, we might sometimes notice it as it arises, before it proliferates. And maybe at that time, we can just let it go. And I really liked that idea. So noticing when my impatience manifests itself, if I'm driving in the car or having a discussion with someone and it gets a little contentious, the sooner that I can recognize that arising of, we can call it a feeling, but it is the Vedana, and it's before feeling, before you're thinking about it. The sooner that I can recognize that, the less harmful behavior will follow that. The sooner you can catch that, and then you can realize, oh yeah, I can let that go. And one of the teachers I listened to, a Kinshino Mark Weber, he's talked quite a bit about letting go and the Vedana. And I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, I'll come back to it. So when we can catch ourselves and we can let go of that, and we don't get stuck into this Buddhist thing is what you feel, you perceive, what you perceive, you think about, what you think about, you proliferate, papancha. I'm a great one for proliferation. What you proliferate about is the source from which a person is beset by concepts of identity that emerge from the proliferation of perceptions. And this occurs with respect to the past, the future, and the present. So Vedana doesn't leave us alone just because it's in the past. And it, in fact, seems to not leave us alone, even if it's something we're thinking about in the future. We can be thinking about things in the future and go, I don't like that. I don't like it. What happened in the past, you can bring it up again. And of course, in the present moment, there it is. So, I don't have a lot more to say about that. I think that sitting practice, and it's quite funny if you start reading about impatience on, let's say, WebMD or Mayo Clinic. What are you going to do if you're an impatient person? And the number one antidote to impatience that the several websites have, get ready for it, mindfulness was the number one antidote to impatience. Who would have thunk it, right? But it's absolutely true. If we're not paying attention, we're not going to be able to work our way through these issues because we won't even recognize them. So practice. When do those impulses arise? How did that feeling start? How did I start thinking about all of this stuff? And how far can we trace it back to where we could find it arising within us? Because that's the place that we can cut it off. And it just takes a lot of practice to start to pay attention to where do these feelings arise. And they just arise from contact. And that's, as my son used to say, that's the way my life is. And anyway, we have it to deal with, but it is trainable. And now I remember what Akinshaw was talking about, that patience is a virtue. And he says, virtues are trainable. Everybody has the ability to be patient at one degree or another, but you can cultivate that patience and you can become a more patient person or a less impatient person. I'm shooting for less impatient in this practice. So I guess that's the whole deal on impatience, trying to pay attention to where it arises from. And the more that we can find that out, the quicker we can cut that chain of reactivity. And I think I'm just going to let it sit there, and I'll see if anybody wants to ask a question.
Hey, Carl, this is Shinko Marilyn over here.
Hi there.
Hi there. I want to express my gratitude to you for such a wonderful daily reminder of how we can practice today. So when I hear the word Vedana, what comes to mind for me is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And that's what you were talking about, I think, with the orange juice.
Yep.
And your talk today for me was entirely pleasant. It was a pleasant Vedana. And I'm going to have to go back to my books, if you will, and look up the paramitas and also the perfection, the links, 12 links.
Yeah.
If craving comes before Vedana, as you said. And I
No,
did
craving comes right after Vedana.
oh, after Vedana. Okay.
It's a consequence of it. It's the Vedana leads to craving.
And so, what I take from your talk is, I think what I've become somewhat aware of also in my own practice is that mindfulness is the key to breaking that chain.
It is the main tool.
Yeah.
It is the main tool. That's right. If we're not paying attention, we're going to have a tough time.
Yeah. And so I guess all those, I'm not going to say they're stupid hours on the cushion, but sometimes I feel like, well, maybe I'm not getting anywhere. But I think in the end, as Bhikkhu Analio would say, yeah, just stay on the cushion with mindfulness and you're doing what you need to do. So I want to thank you for the talk and a wonderful practice tip for today.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Well, I guess. Yes, Jushin.
Yeah, I don't know if I actually really have anything to add. Just one interesting thing, especially from the Tibetan tradition, this goes back to Mother's Day. So in the Tibetan tradition, they really emphasize the fact that because we have had many, 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 many rebirths, that everyone has been our mother at one point, and we should remember that. Everyone has been our mother at one point. I'm always, I just think it's fascinating to me from that, and that the Buddha sort of was able to identify things, and not the way that current evolutionary psychologists would talk about it, but are very congruent with it in terms of, as Rushin and I always like to remind each other, you're not in control. There's no I to be in control of anything. And the way things appear to us as conscious awareness is only about 5% about what's going on in your brain. The rest of it is actually all of the, it's almost like we have multiple personality disorder, because we have all these different systems jockeying for control. And there's kind of a part of your brain that decides which one is the most important one at any given moment. And it's basically the default mode network, which is like, if you're not concentrating on a specific task, you have a default mode that's literally looking for trouble. But sort of in our modern situation, it's kind of just looking for trouble. And a lot of times I find for myself, boredom is like literally, like, you can't control what's going on. You can't make the guy in front of you go any faster. You don't like just sitting in the car for 2 hours or however long it takes, 3 hours it takes to get from the Twin Cities. And what they have found in meditators is that their default mode network has quieted. It has stopped looking for trouble. So.
Thanks.
So early in your talk, you talked about the psychologists talking about impatience, as if impatience were the base, and patience is something that occurs once in a while. And I can understand that, because it seems like impatience isn't something that arises, it's something that's rather continuous, because we want the world to be a certain way, and it's never that way. And it doesn't take much contact with the outside world to find out that that's the case. So I've had this year, last year, this year, I've had work done around the house, and it's like last year it was like I couldn't get anybody to get working, and that was driving me crazy, because they said they would work and then they didn't show up or whatever. This year because somebody suggested, well, maybe they started running out of money. The reactions were instantaneous. People were here within days, but then to finish the work, to get a nice clean finish was almost impossible. And that was almost as bad for impatience. It's like, let's get this done. Let's get this over with. And it's like, and I realized there's very few pieces of your life there's a very clean finish. There's nothing that really sets off and so, oh, that's a beautiful clean finish. No, that doesn't happen. So I don't know. It seems to me that impatience is just something that we're actually. I think of my career in software and the impatience and the obsession and the whole thing is very, very well rewarded under those circumstances. But it's just hell the rest of your life. It's just it doesn't work. It's unpleasant. And I think maybe the impatience has grown to patience. So I do know that because I've spent so much time sitting in hospital rooms and rehab centers, that I have skills in being able to sit there quietly where other people can't take that. And I can really relate to the idea that people can't sit in a room for 15 minutes without shocking themselves. And there's a place in town that has an anechoic chamber, and people I don't know, nobody can stay in this anechoic chamber because there's no sound. All you hear is your breathing and your heartbeat. And I'm thinking, whoa, that sounds very familiar to me. Why don't they get a few meditators and see if they can go over 45 minutes, over an hour? It seems like that's just the natural thing. We're at that all the time. And if you don't learn something about patience by sitting and waiting for someone to hit the bell when obviously they've just lost it. So that's it.
Thanks. Well, I have a granddaughter that's 3.5 years old. And you can see the Vedana in a toddler. I mean, it's like, I like this, I don't like this. I like this, I don't like this. And it has given me a chance to think about craving and suffering. We grow up, when we're toddlers, we have wondrous experiences, which we just love. And then the rest of life comes along, and they're not those wondrous experiences. In fact, some of them aren't very nice at all. You know, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to pick up my toys. I don't want to do this. I want to have fun. I want to have one of those little peak experiences there. And we learn how pleasant, how pleasurable, how wondrous life events can be. And when they're not as wonderful as our most wonderful experiences go, well, then as a toddler, you're disappointed, you know. As an adult, you're kind of regretful. Oh, well, you know, that was great. This one's not so great. There's a lot of not so great stuff around. And I remember the really great stuff, and I wish I had more really great stuff and less not so great stuff. And, you know, it's just human nature going around in circles. But, you know, it is just that chain of reactivity there. So at least we're trainable.
Yeah.
That is our saving grace, is that we can learn and cultivate these virtues. So anyway, that's all I got. You got any announcements, Jushin?
I do have announcements.
All right, go for it.
I guess that's this next weekend, May 17th through the 19th, we have Caring for the Land.
Yeah, it's actually a Wednesday. It starts on Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, because today's the 14th, so it's got to be soon. May 21st through the 28th is the Just Sitting Retreat. That might be full, but you can check if you're interested.
There are standby tickets available for that, but it is sold out.
June 1st through the 4th is the Hokyoji True Heart Woman's Retreat. And that one, there were spaces for the last one I looked at.
I don't know. I think
Oh, yeah, that one's
we
standby.
squashed that. We've got, I think, 21 women signed up for it.
And June 8th through the 11th is the Loring Group. And June 20th through the 23rd will be Caring for the Land again if anybody wants to pop down to Hokyoji.
Yeah, we've stuck in some extra Caring for the Lands because some people, they just like to do it. So we're trying to give them the opportunities.
And next week we will hear from Reverend Myo-o Habermas Sher. And then on the 28th, we will hear from our guiding teacher, Dokai Georgeson. So let's close with the 4 vows. If I can remember them. Would have
Beings are numberless.
numberless. I vow to free them.
Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them.
Dharma
Gates are boundless. I
vow to enter them.
them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable.
I
vow to realize.
it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this Sunday, and we hope to see you next week.
Happy Mother's Day, Marilyn.
Bye,
Thank you.
thanks.
I
Bye.
love mothers so much. I have
Thanks,
two.
Carol.
All right. Bye-bye.